Hi guys, this lesson will be on 8-3, factoring trinomials. So, first of all, let's review a little bit. When we take a binomial, x plus 2 times x plus 3, and we find the product of these two, we use the distributive property. So first we would go x and distribute this first x to both of our second terms right here. So we do x times x is x squared, x times 3 is 3x. Then we would take our 2 and distribute it to our two terms in our second binomial. So we do 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 3 is 6. Finally, we'd combine our middle terms to get x squared plus 5x plus 6. Factoring trinomials, we'll be taking a trinomial like x squared plus 5x plus 6, and we'll be factoring it back into our two binomials. So in order to do this, we need to take a closer look at our trinomial and where each of these three terms came from. First of all, our x squared. It comes from the x and the x, right, being multiplied right there. Our last term of the 6 comes from multiplying the 3 and the 2 together. So this 6 comes from the factor, this 6 right here comes from the multiplication of our last two terms, the 2 times the 3. And this x comes from the multiplication of the x times the x. The 5 comes from combining, this 5x right here, comes from combining our 3x and our 2x. The 3x comes from multiplying the x times the 3, and the 2x comes from multiplying the 2 times the x. So let's look at our first example now. Let's factor the trinomial x squared plus 6x plus 8. Our x squared, first of all, we know that this will factor into a binomial times a binomial. We know that our x squared comes from multiplying x times x as our first two terms. Our last term of the 8 will come from the multiplication of our second terms in our binomial. So we need to look at the factors of 8, and what I like to do is a list. The factors of 8, we have 8 times 1 or 2 times 4. We are looking for the factors of 8 that add, because we have a plus sign right here, to our middle term of 6. Well, 8 plus 1 is 7, so that isn't the option we're looking for. 4 plus 2 gives us 6, and 4 times 2 gives us 8. These are the factors of 8 that we multiplied, sorry about that, to get the 8 as our last term. In order for these factors to multiply to 8 but to add up to 6, they had to have the same sign. So this plus sign with the 8 tells us that we had same signs and that we had to add to get to our middle term of 6x. The positive 6x tells us that both of our signs in the middle had to be positive. Now we should also check our work by finding the product of our answer. So x plus 4 times x plus 2 gives us x times x gives us x squared, x times 2 gives us 2x, x times 4 gives us 4x, and 4 times 2 gives us 8. When we combine our middle terms, we do get the 6x as our middle term. So we've now checked our answer by finding the product of this. We get our original problem of x squared plus 6x plus 8, so we know that we factored this completely, and our answer is x plus 4 times x plus 2. In example 2, we need to look at the factors of 15 that add to a positive 8. So the factors of 15 are 15 and 1, or 3 and 5. We're looking for the factors that add, because we have a positive 15 here, we're looking at the factors that add to our middle term of 8. So 15 plus 1 is 16, 5 plus 3 is 8. So these are the factors that we need. So we'll take our trinomial and break it up into A, and 5 and 3. We have the plus sign here, which tells us that our binomials will have the same sign. The positive 8 will tell us that they're both pluses. And as always, we should FOIL out our answer to make sure that we did this correctly. A times A is A squared. A times 3 is 3A. 5 times A is 5A. 5 times 3 is 15. And we combine our middle terms, we do get 8A. So our answer is A plus 5 times A plus 3. In example 2, we'll be looking at the factors of 16. So our factors of 16 are 16 times 1, 2 times 8. 16 is not divisible by 3, but it is divisible by 4, 4 times 4. Because we have a plus 16, we'll be looking at the factors of 16 that add to give us 10. That gives us 17. 8 plus 2 is 10, so this is the option that we want. 4 plus 4 is 8, so we don't want that one. So our answer will be x and 8, x and 2. Now, the positive 16 tells us that our binomials will have the same sign. The negative 10 tells us that they will both be negative. And as always, we should find the product to make sure that we've done this correctly. X times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is a negative 2x. Negative 8 times x is a negative 8x. Negative 8 times negative 2 is a positive 16. And when we combine our middle terms, we do get that negative 10x. So we've factored this correctly. In example 3, we'll be looking at the factors of 15. But we'll be looking at the factors of 15 that when we subtract, we get 2x. So 15 is 15 times 1, or 3 times 5. We're subtracting our factors to get 2. So 15 minus 1 is 14. 5 minus 3 is 2. So these are the factors that we want. We want a 5 and a 3. So in our parentheses, we'll put x and 5, x and 3. Now, the negative 15 tells us that we had opposite signs in our parentheses. The only way that we'd get a negative 15 is if we had a negative 5 times a positive 3, or if we had a positive 5 times a negative 3. We're looking for the option that adds up to a positive 2. Well, negative 5 plus 3 gives us a negative 2. A positive 5 plus a negative 3 gives us a positive 2. This is the option that we want. So our 5 will be positive and our 3 will be negative. And as always, we should find the product of our binomials to check our answer. X times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. 5 times x is 5x. And 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. As we combine our middle terms, we see the positive 2x as our middle term, and we know that we factored this correctly. In example 4, we'll be solving the equation x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals 0. Because we have a quadratic equation, we need to solve by factoring. There are 3 steps in solving by factoring. Our first step is to set our equation equal to 0. Our second step would be to factor. And our third step is to solve. we'll be solving by setting each of the factors equal to 0. So first, our equation is equal to 0 in this particular problem. So we get to move on to step 2 and factor. We'll be factoring x squared plus 6x minus, x squared plus 5x minus 6 by looking at the factors of negative 6. The factors of negative 6, remember we'll be looking at the factors of 6 that subtract to give us 5. So the factors of 6 are 6 and 1, or 2 times 3. 6 minus 1 is 5. 3 minus 2 is 1, so we're not looking at that. So we'll factor this into x and 6 and x and 1. And we want these to subtract and give us a positive 5. So 6 minus 1 gives us a positive 5. If we did a negative 6 and a positive 1, this would give us a negative 5. So what this tells us is the 6 has to be the positive number, and the 1 has to be the negative number. Now on to step 3, we'll be setting each one of our factors equal to 0. So x plus 6 equals 0. And we'll be solving. So x equals a negative 6. Now x minus 1 equals 0. And x equals 1. Our answers are that x equals a negative 6 and that x equals 1. Now, we can check our work by plugging this into our original equation. If we have a negative 6 squared plus 5 times negative 6 minus 6, will this give us 0? Well, negative 6 squared is 36. Positive 36. 5 times negative 6 is a negative 30. And we have a minus 6. So 36 minus 30 is 6. Minus 6 is in fact 0. Now we'll do the same thing but with the 1. If we plug in the 1, we'd have, I'm going to have to do this up here because I'm running out of room. We'd have 1 squared, which is 1. Then we'd have 5 times 1 to give us 5. And our minus 6. 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. So that checks out as well.